So the first item I've chosen today is this. It is a brochure for a memorial service to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who wrote Sherlock Holmes, amongst other things. So this is a Sunday, the 13th of July, 1950. It's about a week, I think, after he died. And this is a group of people getting together to try and make contact with Arthur Conan Doyle after his death. The chairman here has a very great name of George Craze. That's a good name for somebody trying to bring the dead back to life. I'm intrigued because I'm a massive fan of Conan Doyle. I love Sherlock Holmes stories. But I don't think as a kid I realised just how fascinated he was by ghosts. And now here I am, somebody who talks a lot about ghosts. He had some high-profile spats with people like Harry Houdini, the escapologist, and like paranormal beefs of their day, with the two Harrys basically saying that a lot of the mediums, the psychics that Conan Doyle was talking to were fakes, were charlatans, and Conan Doyle staunchly defending them and saying, no, these people are real, and they really are speaking to the dead. And he was somebody who got involved in so many seances with people standing around and trying to summon people, and he was wanting to actually speak to his own sons who had died in the First World War. Here's a crowd of people coming to try and contact him after his death, just a week after he died. His wife, his widow, sitting there, and possibly his family around him. And there's an empty chair there on the front row of the hall, which they are hoping that he will appear in. They're literally hoping that the ghost of Conan Doyle can fill that chair. So it's absolutely incredible. It was kind of almost like a branch of science to people who'd lived through that Victorian and Edwardian era. They felt this was the final frontier and that somewhere out there were the dead. So my next item is this here. It's from 1990, and it looks a little bit like a comic book or an old annual, and it's actually a program, a theatre program for the comedian Jasper Carrott. You do not get programs like this anymore. The amount of effort going into this. Look at all these photographs, comic strips, loads of stuff. Now, Jasper Carrott was massive. I mean, he was huge, like a comedy behemoth of the 80s and 90s. And I remember watching him on TV. The reason I've got this in my hand, though, is that he had a ghostly experience at this very show back in 1990. He was performing there at the hall in front of thousands of people, and people witnessed what looked like a person dressed in white walk out onto the stage, and nobody quite knew what was going on. Was this somebody from the audience who was disrupting the show? Backstage staff as well, the stage managers, also saw this appear on their monitors. Then this person just disappeared. And to this day, nobody quite knows who this figure in white was that walked out and disrupted Jasper's show. But it's worked its way into the folklore of the hall as one of the great ghost stories. I've also chosen this, though, because I have a background in comedy myself, and Jasper Carrott would have been one of the people who inspired me a bit when I was a kid, I guess. I used to watch loads of comedy as a kid, and then went on and did stand-up comedy from the age of about 15 or 16 in the pubs and clubs of the northeast, Newcastle and Sunderland, Hartlepool, Middlesbrough, working my way around. This kind of baptism of fire of learning how to perform. And I did loads of comedy after that. I used to write comedy for Radio 4 and for TV and, sketch shows, sitcoms, all sorts. It's still the thing, I think, that grounds me in just loving being on stage with an audience, loving improvising, loving talking to people and riffing off people. And all of the comedy I consumed over the years feeds into that. Our last item is one of the Royal Albert Hall scrapbooks here, and I pulled it out for a particular reason. It has got lots of articles about a ghost hunt here. This is a guy called Andrew Green. He was somebody who investigated lots of the big cases and wrote a lot about ghosts and is highly respected. And he came here to the Royal Albert Hall to go on a ghost hunt. And there are so many stories connected to the hall, some really interesting ones. And they date right back to before the hall even existed. There was a house called Gore House that stood here. There are two ladies that are said to appear once a year, every year at the hall, always at the same time, between 1:30 and 2 o'clock in the morning, apparently. Loads of articles here about this ghost hunt. It was quite big news back in the day, I think. Person who built the organ, Henry Willis, who designed the organ. Some people tend to see his ghost in the building whenever they're doing work to the organ. He comes back just to make sure that nobody's tampering with it too much. It says here, the Albert Hall's management says it called in Mr. Green because it wanted to discover what was behind the feelings of unease sensed by staff and workmen inside the building at night, reported since the 1930s. So really interesting, the Hall actually decided they want to try and make sense of some of the things that people are experiencing. And so many people working here have had potential encounters, feeling they see figures or hear things or just feel a sense of it getting particularly cold or particularly hot. There's a quote here from Andrew Green saying that temperature in a top floor room was 83 degrees, even though both of its windows were open. I found out it was over the spot where 2 workmen drowned in the Serpentine. That's the lake out in the park, which used to run under here before the hall was built. It's fitted. So interesting, that idea of the history that lies under this building, and then the ways it can potentially manifest itself in people having these strange, potentially paranormal experiences. The lovely thing about being in an archive like this is that you feel you're surrounded by ghosts, actually, and just reading all of these things from the past of the hall, each of these programs that I've found, each of these things that I've been going through today, a little fragment of the hall's history, a little ghost. I like the idea that our ghosts might actually spring out and appear to us on Fright Night. So if you join us for Fright Night, will we actually see something appear on stage, just like Jasper Carrott had? Will the man in white who walked into Jasper Carrott's gig appear for us? Thank you for watching. I'm Danny Robbins. This has been In the Archive at the Royal Albert Hall. Come and see me at Fright Night this Halloween upstairs in the hall.